Hello, Smash fans. I'm PD Smash, and welcome back to another episode of the PD Smash Sports Podcast. Today, we have a good episode for you. We're going to talk about the Jets win, the Falcons meltdown once again, and the Chiefs almost losing to the Saints, as well as breaking down opening night of the basketball season and previewing the 2020 Christmas games for the NBA season. So first off, I want to talk about the Jets. The freaking Jets, man. They can't even tank right, can they? I've never seen a team so bad at everything, including being bad. So that's just the first thing. Can you at least pick what you want to do? Because it looked legitimately earlier in the season when they ran that blitz and some of the other sketchy moves they've made throughout that entire season that they were intentionally trying to tank for Trevor Lawrence. But then they go and win a game, and now they don't even have the number one pick. Great work there, Jets. But this actually brings up an interesting point. As a Jets front office, if you don't end up with the number one overall pick because the Jaguars don't win another game or some other fantastic thing happens, what does that mean for Sam Darnold? Are you going to draft Justin Fields or another quarterback at number 2? Or are you going to give Sam Darnold another chance and try to build around Sam Darnold and give your draft picks a year to develop before you make a decision? Now, there are pros and cons to each, but in my opinion, you give Sam Darnold another chance. Because if you really look at what Sam Darnold's had over the past couple years, it's pretty pathetic. It's his best weapon has been past his prime Le'Veon Bell, or maybe a year before his breakout Robbie Anderson. Neither of those players were particularly great or even good. Robbie Anderson showed promise, and we see that promise coming back out now. About a year later, we saw all the tools just kind of all came together for Robbie Anderson, but it's annoying. The Jets front office didn't surround Sam Darnold with any talent whatsoever. And I mean whatsoever. And then on top of that, last year, before they traded away Jamal Adams, let go of Le'Veon Bell, and traded their best wide receiver, they went 7-9. So it wasn't like that team was bad by any stretch in Sam Darnold's second year. So this team was just made for Sam Darnold to fail. So now that you can't tank for Lawrence or tank for Trevor or whatever you want to call it, what do? Do you say, you know what, let's give Sam Darnold a fair shake, which I think you should, and build around him with that number 2 overall pick? Or what you really should do is trade down that number 2 overall pick for maybe a pick next year and a pick in the top 15, top 20 this year, or a couple top 10, top 15 picks this year. Because you trade it to, I don't know. I'm trying to think right now. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head that really needs a quarterback. But if you go through maybe the Chicago Bears are a potential suitor here. You trade Chicago, you get their first round pick, and then you get a second or maybe 2 seconds so they can move up to the number 2 spot. And you're telling me that the Bears aren't going to be deal? Because they need a quarterback. They're a quarterback away from being a serious contender. So they need a quarterback like a Justin Fields. Or just someone really just competent. Which I was surprised they didn't go after Cam Newton last year's free agency, because that's someone they could have really used, because they didn't really need Cam Newton to do much. Way less than the Patriots needed him to do this year. And Cam Newton could use his athletic ability. He could use his ability to throw down the deep ball before COVID. And that's a whole nother topic of discussion that I might get into in the offseason about Cam Newton and COVID. But that's another story for another day. But you need someone like Chicago or another team who needs a quarterback that's behind you. You could definitely trade down and get a bunch of assets so you can build yourself a team around Sam Darnold, because even if you draft a quarterback at number 2, it's going to take you multiple draft picks just to become relevant again, because there are draft years, because there are so many, and I mean so many holes on that team that it's insane. You're telling me you're going to start Frank Gore. You have no true number one or number two wide receiver, really, for that matter. You can't get any pressure. The back end suspect. Your linebackers, not great. Like, that entire team is trash. Like, it's not great. It's not 0-16 worthy. And that's why I thought they were tanking, but it's not great. It's 1-2 wins. It's really no good. I would say Sam Darnold is probably like their best player. And that's kind of crazy to think about him. Be like him, Jamison Crowder, and I literally don't know who else. That team is so god-awful that you're talking about your best player being a quarterback that you might move on from. That should tell you about how much help you have given the Jets and given Sam Darnold over the past couple years. But anyway, moving on from that to the Falcons, and this is just Falcons being the most disappointing team in the NFL year after year after year after year after year. Man, this is the second time, and I mean the second time. I'm so disgusted by this, I'm yawning. This is the second time that the Atlanta Falcons have blown a 17-point lead this year. That's insane to think about. 17-point leads are hard, and I mean really, really hard to come back from. And they've blown 2 of them. And whenever you see the Falcons just need to we need to come up with some name for the Falcons and Tom Brady. You know, like how it's LeBronto instead of Toronto. We need to come up with something for Tom Brady and the Falcons, because Tom Brady owns the Falcons. Like, I don't know, Atlanta, I don't know. But you see what I mean. Like, I can't with the Falcons. They're even considering hiring Raheem Morris, which, like, okay, I get it. He's done a pretty good job. But at the same time, unless you should be trying to reboot at this point, because you can't win a championship with your team at this current moment. Matt Ryan's past his prime. Julio Jones can't stay on the field. Calvin Ridley's a promising young piece, but you need someone to put around him. Like, it's time for you to move on and try to draft a quarterback in this year or next year. Start the reboot, because it is time. It is so time for the end of this era of Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. They've had some good runs, but they couldn't complete it. And that's just a fact that we need to live with. Anyway, moving on to the Saints almost win against Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this would be surprising because, you know, it's the Kansas City Chiefs and the Saints. They're the 2 best teams in the NFL, if you ask some people. But this was Drew Brees coming off an injury. So in the first quarter, damn, I don't know why I'm yawning so much. I'm sorry, guys. Anyway, Drew Brees in the first quarter looked horrendous. He did. That Saints offense in general looked horrendous in that first quarter. And you're telling me with all the all the stats that were in Kansas City's favor that they only lost by, what was it, 1 point? That's not good enough. You're the best team in the NFL according to 90% of people. You need to be blowing people out if they give you the opportunity to do so. These 1-possession wins are scaring me and make me think they are more and more human as time goes on. And perception is a lot in the NFL. So if you're giving the perception that you're weak, then teams are going to bounce on it because it's one game. This isn't like in the NBA where it's a 7-game series. You lose a game, okay, it's not that big of a deal. Just bounce back, and the better team usually wins. That's not the case in the NFL. The NFL is who is hot at the right time and who can take advantage of the other person's weaknesses from a game-to-game basis. And if you're telling me that the Kansas City Chiefs are looking human, and you give me someone like the Bills who are red hot, they're going to be like, you know what? They're not that scary. We're going to beat them. And the Bills can go into a shootout with the Kansas City Chiefs, without a doubt. And that defense is an opportunistic one. So you give them a chance to pick a ball off, to make a person miss, to create some sort of havoc, they'll most likely do it. So you got to be really careful if you're the Chiefs. Like, really careful. To not let too much doubt seep in. Because if you let that doubt seep in, eventually, that doubt is going to turn into a loss. And you guys haven't lost since, gosh, I don't even remember when. I think it was like week 4 against the Raiders. So you need to make sure you keep on a strong front. Or just pull your starters now because you had the 1 seed, so pull them now. Or in this next couple of games, really show your dominance. Or someone like the Buffalo Bills are going to come up at you and be like, nah, you guys don't scare me. And they're going to beat you because you haven't been on your A game. So you need to be really careful about that, Chiefs. Yeah, that's funny because I say Chiefs a lot. This is a little mini rant, but I say Chiefs a lot to like people like, okay, Chief, and I just did it there. That's funny. Okay, anyway, back on topic. Now I want to talk about the opening day games. The first one I want to talk about is the Brooklyn and the, gosh, I'm blinking, Warriors game. There we go. Now, I don't think what a lot of people were expecting. It seemed like people were trying to hype this game up to more than it was. The Warriors are not good. And I mean, they're not good. Will they make an eighth seed? Possibly. But even you talk to, like, analysts, they're like, oh, James Harden, Chris Paul, what did it face? Russell Westbrook, all drag teams to playoff appearances. But no one in their minds thought that any of those teams were championship teams. So I think that expecting them to beat the Nets, which I think the Nets are probably a top 3 team, at least in the regular season, they're going to be a top 3 team when fully healthy. Because that depth is insane. The team was a playoff team without Kyrie and without Kevin Durant. So you add that and you have one hell of a team. So you can't just be like, oh. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that that's supposed to be the second or third best team in the NBA, my apologies, that the Warriors are supposed to put up a fight. There's no way, especially when half that roster hasn't played with each other in such a long time or ever. Like, Kelly Oubre's never played with that team. Wiseman's never played with that team. Wiggins only got to play a few games together, and not a lot of them were with Curry. If any of them, I can't remember, but I don't think any of them were with Curry. Or if so, it was very few. Curry hasn't played basketball with any of those guys in a long time. They were starting Wiseman at center. I don't even remember their starting lineup. They didn't have Draymond Green in, which is a big part there. Like, Pascal didn't play. Like, that team's an entirely new team. It's like they reconstructed that entire team. I don't think people really understand that. Like, Steph Curry hasn't played basketball in nearly 2 years, minus those 5 hand injuries, or it's a year and a half minus those 5 games before the hand injury. And then you got to be really careful with your expectations on opening night for them. So I wasn't really surprised to see the blowout. I think Steph Curry still looked good. I think it's going to take him a few games before he looks like MVP Steph, because he hasn't played that much in the past year and a half. You got to remember that they took a lot of time off, so it's going to take a few games to get that rust off. And then I think it's going to take a few games for them to all gel together. So to expect them to come out and beat a team who's, besides KD and Kyrie, all played together last season and all played in the bubble last season, that's a very tall task and not one that you could really ask very much of Curry to do. So saying that KD and Kyrie were this was supposed to be a close game by any means without Clay, because this was probably, I don't know if this was scheduled before Clay's injury, but I believe it was. I just don't see what people were trying to say. I think the Warriors will make the playoffs. I think they'll hit the 8th seed. It's going to be really hard to tell because this is the toughest West I've personally ever seen in my lifetime. Like, I remember, like, there's been a couple, like 2000, I don't remember. It was like the year the Mavericks won the title. That was a really tough West as well. But that's the first real, like, playoff I remember. So from 2011 to, what is this, the 2020-2021 season. It's really just the 2021 season, but the 2020-2021 season, this is definitely the toughest West because you have 9-10 teams that could realistically make a playoff appearance, and you would be like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, they should make the playoffs. And then on the East, it's not like that much different. Of course, the East is still weaker. The top end teams aren't as good, and the bottom end teams aren't quite as good. But it's still like you got 9 or 10 teams there that are like, yeah, I could see them making the playoffs. So this is a very deep year. So I'm going to be surprised and curious to see what happens. But I wouldn't put too much stock in this game because it wasn't like any of them had been playing with each other for a long time. So now moving on to the second game, which would be the Clippers and the LA Lakers. Now, this is going to sound weird to say, but I feel better about the Lakers after this game than I did before the season started because of what happened in that second and third quarter. Because in that second and third quarter, they came back from 22 down to tie the game. Now, yes, they couldn't get over the hump, but you're telling me that a team that really only had 70 days off was able to battle back and make that game close for the majority of it it's pretty insane. Yes, in the end, the Clippers won that game, but they didn't play LeBron like any of the fourth. They had a lineup out there with like Talen Horton-Tucker damn, that took me a long time to say. I do think Talen Horton-Tucker is going to be good in the long run. I just don't think he's there yet where he should be closing out games. But it's like they had a lineup running out there that was really weird. And like, you got to understand, it looked like they treated this as a preseason game and the Clippers still almost lost. And that's kind of scary if you're a Clippers fan because you're asking yourself, why? Why did we almost lose that game? There's no reason you guys should have almost lost that game. And the fact that you guys did is scary. And it's not like you solved any of the problems last year. Despite I don't remember who it was. I think it was Reggie Miller who was calling that game. Who kept saying, I really like Nicholas Batum's length. I really like what this person adds to the Clipper team. I don't care. He averaged like 3 points a game last season. Nicholas Batum does not solve your problems. You needed a point guard who could handle the ball and you didn't get it still. So you needed that facilitating point guard and you didn't get it. You should have picked up Rondo in free agency. Or you need to pick up a point guard out in the buyout market or trade market. All of that is true. Like, you didn't solve anything with your free agency. So that was really odd. It was really odd just in general, that free agency class for the Clippers and that game for the Clippers, because I feel so much worse about the Clippers after opening night than I did beforehand. But not only that, it seems like the Clippers in that organization are starting to fall apart, and that is not a good thing, I would say. Anyway, now to our final topic of the day. We're going to be talking about... Actually, it's not the final topic, because I want to touch on this first. James Harden. My man, James Harden, is now probably about to either get suspended or fined for his strip club activities. Him and Dwayne Haskins probably, because Dwayne Haskins got caught as well. Like, I don't understand. First, let's just talk about Dwayne Haskins first, and then we'll move on to James Harden, because James Harden's a little more complex. Dwayne Haskins, I don't know what you're doing, dude. You had the inside track to start next year, and you blew it because you wanted... I don't even know what the heck you wanted to do, dude. Dude, just don't. Just, you really need to chill. And this was not at all a good look for you. And I think this might have single-handedly ruined your chances of ever starting at the NFL level again. So, great work, my guy. Anyway, now moving on to James Harden. I don't know what's happening with James Harden. Is this because he's throwing a temper tantrum because he didn't want Steve Silas as his head coach? Or is there some other underlying reason he's going to a strip club during a pandemic right as training camp starting? I really don't see it at all why he would do anything like that. It seems to me that he is the problem in Houston. You can say all you want about Russell Westbrook, but at least he gives it his all for his teammates. Like, yes, is he not the greatest sport in the entire world? 100%. But does he try his hardest every game on that court? Yes. Yes, he does. And that fact is undeniable. And then anyone who really is hating on Chris Paul for some reason, you saw what he could do with a bad team back in 2008 with the Hornets and then now with last year's Thunder. But not only that, Chris Paul is the only reason that the Rockets got as far as they did against the Golden State Warriors in, 2018? Without Chris Paul, as you saw after Game 5, it fell apart. It fell apart. They fell apart. There was no reason at all that the Rockets should have lost that series. But because Chris Paul was both the leader on and off the court of that team, when he went down, so did their chances of winning that series. This whole saga shows that James Harden's the problem, not the pieces around him. And it's time for James Harden to either accept that and take a lesser role, or to change his playing style to be a true number one option who can win a championship, because this iso ball heavy usage rate is not working and it's showing. So really, you really just need to check yourself, James Harden. Please. Anyway, now actually for our final topic, I want to talk about the games that are coming up on Christmas Day. Yay! Christmas is coming. Christmas is coming. But anyway, first off, we have the Pelicans and Heat. Now, I think this is going to be a better game than most people are going to give it credit for, because I think Lonzo's going to get better. I think Zion's actually going to start playing to his full potential because he's not going to be out of shape anymore. And I think Brandon Ingram's going to take another step. I don't know if it will be a jump or it will be a step, but I think he will at least get a little better. You add that to the fact that Steven Adams is just a better version of Derek Favors, in my opinion. I don't think Derek Favors was a little better shooter, but he wasn't really that much better of a shooter. Really, I'd love them to try to run Zion at the 5. I think that would be a great experiment to run, because, yeah, I think he's like, 6'6"? But you're telling me Zion at what is he, 285, can't at least bang with some of the smaller centers? This would be a great test, actually, because you would have someone like him guard Bam Adebayo, which Bam Adebayo isn't the biggest man in the world. I think he's 6'10". So, Zion guarding Bam is a good matchup to see if he could actually play some small ball 5. And that also allows you to, have a lot more freedom with your lineup. So I think they should do that, but that's another topic for another day. Anyway, I think that young team will give the Heat some fight. I think the Heat will eventually win that game. I think the Heat are just a more talented team overall. I think you give the Pelicans one more year before they're going to actually be, legit contenders, or not contenders, I shouldn't say that. Legit playoff, a legit playoff team. I would say that you got to give them one more year before they can become a legit playoff team in my eyes. So even though they're going to be super exciting to watch, I don't really see the Heat losing And I don't see the Heat winning by that much because I think that Zion and Brandon Ingram are going to be able to keep it pretty close. Now, next, we have the Warriors-Bucks. Now, the Bucks, in my opinion, got better, and they're always a great regular season team. They're the best regular season team over the past, 3 years? So, yeah, the Warriors are going to lose this game, and they're probably going to lose it very handily. It's kind of an L they gave the Warriors two back-to-back, two of the top 3 regular season teams, in my opinion, in the Lakers. Or, I guess the Lakers maybe will be, if the Lakers are playing like all their guys the correct amount of minutes, then they're the most dangerous team in the NBA. I keep saying the NFL. Sorry, guys. But most dangerous team in the NBA. But even without that, the Bucks and the Nets are 2 of the top 3 most dangerous teams in the regular season. So that's an L for the Warriors. They're just going to take another L, and I think that's just going to be sad. Now, next we have the Brooklyn Nets playing the Celtics, and I think this is going to be a really, really good game. I think that the Nets are going to do a really good job of keeping this game close and keeping this game high-paced. And I think the Celtics are going to have a good time in ability to deflect and to counter because they have so many weapons on the offensive end, and they are pretty deep, just like the Brooklyn Nets. So I think this is going to be a really good game, but I think the Brooklyn Nets start out 2-0. I think they probably win it either very close at the end of the fourth quarter, either playing the free throw game or winning with a last-second shot, or they win in overtime. Anyway, next we have the primetime game of the Mavericks-Lakers. And honestly, with what I saw from the Lakers, I don't think they're going to take this first 2 weeks of the season very seriously. With that in mind, I think that the Mavericks are going to win here. I think Luka is my MVP for the year. I think he's going to I think he's going to tear the league up. I think they're going to get the number 3 seed. And I think that the Clippers have as much of a chance to win the title as the Mavericks do. Because I think the Mavericks last year were a better team than the Clippers and just got unlucky with the Porzingis injury in that series, because I think if Porzingis is not injured, they beat the Clippers in the first round. So with that in mind, I think that the Mavericks win this game. Finally, we have the Clippers versus the Nuggets. I think the Clippers win this game because this will be a revenge game for them. And although I think the Nuggets are hungry, they're definitely not going to be as hungry as the Clippers. And I think the Clippers are going to punch them in the mouth. And I think they're going to hold it out and win and start 2-0. That's all I have for you all. Thank you for sticking to the end. I know this was kind of a scrambly episode, but I hope you still enjoyed me ranting about a few things and talking about the NBA and NFL with you guys. Thank you so much for listening, and if you want to contact me, you can either go to my blog. If you're listening to this on YouTube, go to the link in the description, click on my blog, then go to my contact page, or if you're on my blog, just go to my contact page, and my email and phone number are both there. While you're at my blog, you could either go check out the article I posted this week, a past article, or maybe a past podcast episode. Thank you all for listening until the end. Until next time, PD Smash, signing off.